that I've been in. I told you we were going to have a discussion soon, and we'll make sure we get access and give access to the proponents of Measure 3 as well. But I saw a letter to the editor from a man that I hold a deep regard and respect for, former Governor Bud Sinner, George Sinner, Governor of North Dakota from 1984, I believe, to 1992, and somebody who. And before we were joined by the statewide audience, I was trying to explain to people really governed during tough times in North Dakota, having to do some budget cutting, seeing farm crises happen throughout there, and knowing what it's like when things weren't as great in the ag sector as what they are now. But Bud has always been an activist. He always will remain an activist. And when I saw his letter coming out against Measure 3, urging a no vote on Measure 3, I thought, I got to call Bud up. I got to get him in here and ask him why. Governor Sinner, good to have you on News and Biz. How you been?
You're very kind, thank you.
Yeah,
I'm very, very well.
I mean, you're still out there writing, putting pen to paper, sending letters to the editor. Nobody's going to tell you to slow down the way it looks.
Well, probably not.
Well, good.
I have my wife, and she pushes me on.
Well, and you know which one of the Sinners, my family, I mean, everybody loves Jane. And so she talked to me the other day about this as well, and I think she holds the same passion.
Oh, sure.
When it comes to Measure 3. What is your opposition to Measure 3?
Well, Measure 3 sets out to block the individual religious freedom that we all have. And everybody has it here. People can do and believe what they think they should. This provision lets a church organization step in and say, "Oh no, you can't do that here. That's against our religious beliefs." And the church organization wants to block the individual freedoms that America guarantees. And that's the scary part. A bishop, as we saw in the national effort to block the dispensing of medicines from Catholic institutions, that was not coming from the grassroots. That came from the top, probably the same group. So I think that's wrong-headed. The founding of the United States was basically people fleeing church-state alliances and denying rights all over Europe. And that's really the roots of our country. People came here, they wanted true freedom to be able to make their own decisions, to do what they thought was right.
Now, you're a longtime member of the Catholic Church, this measure really being driven by the Catholic Church.
It seems so.
No question about that.
I think both of the two bishops were the first signers.
Yeah, and Family Alliance, Tom Fryer, very active, as a conduit with the Catholic Church on this. But when you look at this, what's the problem, in your opinion, or have they told you that they're trying to fix? I mean, what's there that I'm not already afforded that right by the United States Constitution?
I think it's this goes back to the healthcare issue, the dispensing of birth control devices and birth control medicines by institutional centers. I think it's that issue that triggered all this, and they want the right to be able to say to every Catholic institution, "You do not let this happen, and we are going to stop."
No birth control.
No birth control.
And I got Tom Fryer to say that. And Tom Fryer, and you're going to see this on the KX network, here in the East. I did a TV interview with him that's going to run on Friday night at about 6:30 on the show I do called Point of View. And we call it the Hot Box. So he comes in and he's willing to answer questions. And to his credit, he didn't duck, he didn't dive. He just sat there knowing that I probably, as well as you are, in opposition to Measure 3. But, and I said to Tom, and I kind of did some soul searching all weekend about this, Bud, because he admitted that this really was about that. He was open about that. Once I finally said, look, where is the problem? Put it in practical, and he did say, birth control, that the Catholic Church has a problem with that. And I said, well, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a Catholic. I was an altar boy. I mean, I and my wife practiced birth control. I said, we did. Now that's against the teaching of the church, I get that. But you know, there's some who argue whether it's against the teaching of the church. Some of whom, quite frankly, were people that raised me. But my point being this, I asked him whether or not he and his wife used birth control. And instantly that makes your hair kind of go up on the back of your neck, because it's like, well, do you have that right to ask that? And I was uncomfortable asking the question, but I thought, if you're going to go about pushing a measure that takes that right away from people, then I should get to find out whether or not you're being a hypocrite about it or not. You wouldn't answer the question. He said, we're not going to talk about that. He said, we're not going to talk about that today. Which basically, in essence, does answer the question. The question is, did I go too far? Some people yesterday said, yeah, I went too far. I don't know. I'll live with myself on it.
The truth is that this prohibition came in very late, and it was only after we had gotten rid of a married clergy, and here we have a group of celibates who are who don't know anything about the struggles that families go through to raise children. I mean, they don't know. They've never experienced it, and until you've experienced it, you don't know. And number two, they don't know anything about women's health needs, and the vast majority of birth control devices are sold for medical purposes, for women to control their periods and things like that, and they don't know anything about that. Or blood
pressure.
Yeah, or blood pressure. And so, how can they judge who's qualified, who has a legitimate need? And many of them tell people, oh well, yes, you should practice birth control. Obviously, you have a problem. They'll tell you that off camera, and they'll tell lots of people that, and yet they don't want people to be able to decide that for themselves, and that's wrong.
Well, and here's one of the things that I recognize from growing up with the priests that I grew up with. They didn't have that same problem. I don't think that this is as widespread in the church that you and I were raised in as what it is. When you said it's coming from the top down, I believe that. I don't believe it's coming from parishioners, from the wide scale. I don't believe that priests as a whole, other than the new flock that have been recruited into that kind of mode of thinking, and it's been driven by individuals who really want access to, as you're seeing now, heading to places like Denver where you're going to be an archbishop. I'm sorry, but that's part of it. It's all part of now the politics of it all. Yeah. And so that's why I said yesterday, I believe that Measure 3 with Bishop Aquila is going to be really a signature piece of what he did here in North Dakota. Whether or not this passes or not, I think is going to be one of those pieces that he looks to as, hey, there's something that I accomplished. And so it's going to be interesting. But for me, Governor Sinner, I brought up this, and I struggle with this, because North Dakota, we're all struggling to keep township roads. We're all struggling to make sure we have things in the oil patch that we need taken care of, and money going out to our schools. I can see a scenario where the Westboro Baptist Church comes to North Dakota and says, look, this is the teachings of my church. Your Constitution protects those teachings, whether they fly in conflict of what you believe or not, and you will defend that. And North Dakota, because now we've codified it into our Constitution, ends up in a position where we're having to support a religious belief that someone holds because we put it into our Constitution instead of letting it be dealt with on the federal level, which it already is.
Well, listen, I experienced one thing when I was governor. I had a report from law enforcement people that there was a cult. It wasn't part of the Opus Dei cult, but it was a cult, and they were foreigners, but they were practicing family sex sessions, widespread, little children involved, and attack, and I just said, holy crap, we got to do something. So I think it was law enforcement with the health department went up there and explained, no more, stops right now, and they would have argued till hell froze over, that it was
Religious freedom.
there was a religious freedom. But who's going to protect the poor children? And so there are lots of possibilities. We've read a lot about the cults that had the suicides, and their leader told the people to kill themselves. I forget what that was, what the name of that episode.
Jones.
The Jones episode. And so it isn't just what we see, this particular issue, it has the potential of going way beyond. There are some problems that we have to admit. Some professionals are being forced by their corporate hires, employers, to do things that aren't ethical. And some of them heroically are stepping forward and saying, I ain't doing it. And for them, for those people, there needs to be some sort of protection, but certainly not a constitutional amendment. This is crazy. It takes a 2/3 vote in both houses to even amend this darn thing.
Well, and to me, it just looks as though it's in search of a problem.
That's right.
It's in search of a problem. Nobody has infringed upon my religious freedoms. Right now, they have not.
No.
They have not. And so it does go back to what Tom Fryer told me the other day, which is it goes back to a fight on health care about birth control between an administration and the Catholic Church. And so it plays back to that. And it does put it into the Constitution. Bud, you want to take some calls? Let's do it.
Sure.